There comes a quiet season in life when proving yourself no longer feels important, because peace slowly becomes more valuable than approval. At first, you hardly notice the change because it happens quietly, hidden inside ordinary mornings that slowly begin to feel surprisingly different. One day you realize your greatest victories are no longer measured by applause, but by how peacefully you sleep each night. You stop explaining yourself to people who have already chosen misunderstanding, because silence often protects your heart better than endless words. And perhaps that is the quiet gift of growing older, discovering that your energy is too precious to spend proving your worth. When you are young, being understood feels like a necessity, yet time gently teaches that understanding cannot be forced upon another heart. Some people will misunderstand you, regardless of how carefully you explain. Instead of chasing every opinion, you slowly begin choosing something quieter, protecting the peace that once seemed impossible to hold on to. Strangely, the less you seek validation from the world, the more confidently you begin recognizing the quiet value already living within yourself. And perhaps growing older is not about becoming someone new, but finally remembering the person you never needed to stop being. Somewhere along the journey, success quietly stops sounding like applause and begins feeling much more like an untroubled heart. The things that once kept you awake at night slowly lose their power, not because life becomes easier, but because you become wiser. You begin realizing that not every opinion deserves a response, because silence often carries a confidence that words can never imitate. Maturity quietly teaches that protecting your energy is far more meaningful than winning conversations that were never meant to change anyone's mind. There is remarkable freedom in accepting that your worth has never depended upon the approval of people still searching for their own. Once you understand that truth, comparison slowly loses its voice, leaving behind a peaceful space where gratitude quietly begins to grow. You stop measuring your life against someone else's timeline, because every meaningful journey quietly unfolds according to its own season. Time has an unusual way of revealing that rushing rarely brings fulfillment, while patience quietly shapes the strongest parts of our character. The older you become, the less interested you are in proving your strength, because true strength no longer needs an audience. And perhaps that is the greatest gift of growing older, discovering that the only person truly worth becoming is the person who brings you peace. Peace quietly changes the way you look at people, because not every disagreement deserves your attention, and not every opinion deserves your energy. There was a time when every criticism felt personal, but experience slowly teaches that another person's judgment often reflects their own story. Once you understand that, forgiveness becomes easier, because carrying resentment always weighs down the person holding it far more than anyone else. Letting go has never meant forgetting what happened. It simply means refusing to let yesterday continue deciding how you live today. Some lessons arrive through happiness, yet the ones that shape us most often arrive disguised as disappointment and quiet heartbreak. Looking back, you rarely remember the easy days, because struggle quietly leaves behind the deepest wisdom and the strongest character. Perhaps life was never asking you to avoid every storm, but simply teaching you how to remain calm while walking through them. The older you become, the less interested you are in controlling life, because acceptance often brings more freedom than certainty ever could. You finally discover that happiness has never been hiding somewhere ahead, it has always been waiting inside ordinary moments you once overlooked. And once you begin noticing those ordinary moments, life quietly reveals that growing older was never something to fear, but something to appreciate. Appreciation quietly changes everything, because the heart can never feel empty while learning to notice what it already has. We spend years chasing extraordinary moments, only to discover that ordinary days quietly become the memories we miss the most. Time quietly reminds us that every season eventually passes, making gratitude far wiser than constantly wishing for another chapter. Perhaps the greatest freedom comes when you stop asking whether life is fair, and begin asking whether life is meaningful. Meaning is rarely found by searching farther away, because it often waits quietly inside the life already unfolding before your eyes. The world becomes quieter when you stop demanding answers for every question and simply allow some wisdom rarely arrives with loud announcements, because it usually enters our lives as a quiet realization almost too gentle to notice. Looking back, you realize that almost every difficult season quietly prepared you for blessings you could never have imagined before. Suddenly, the future feels less frightening, because experience has already proven that you have survived every chapter life placed before you. And maybe confidence has never meant knowing what comes next, but quietly trusting yourself to face whatever eventually arrives. Life resembles a river more than a destination, because everything meaningful continues moving, whether we are ready to let go or not. Water never argues with the rocks before it, yet over time it quietly shapes even the hardest stone into something beautifully smooth. Perhaps real strength has always looked like this, growing quietly through every season instead of demanding recognition from those passing beneath its shade. The tallest bamboo survives every storm because it bends with the wind, reminding us that flexibility often outlives stubborn pride. Fire teaches another lesson, giving warmth to others while quietly consuming itself, a reminder that even generosity must have healthy limits. A lighthouse never chases lost ships across the ocean, yet its quiet presence continues guiding those genuinely searching for direction. Not every bridge exists to keep people together forever, because some simply help us cross into a different chapter of ourselves. Every grain of sand falls without hesitation, reminding us that time never slows down simply because we are afraid to move forward. Trees never taste their own fruit, quietly teaching that some of life's greatest gifts are meant to nourish someone beyond ourselves. Maybe growing older is simply learning to notice that nature has quietly been teaching us about life all along. The older you become, the more you discover that life's greatest answers rarely arrive through noise, but almost always through quiet reflection. Silence has an unusual way of revealing truths that endless conversations often hide beneath unnecessary words and restless thoughts. A calm mind resembles still water, reflecting reality clearly only after the endless waves of emotion have gently settled. Every season leaves something behind before quietly moving on, reminding us that growth always asks us to release something first. We often fear letting go, forgetting that rivers reach the ocean only because they never cling to where they began. Even the ripest fields bow before the wind, quietly reminding us that humility often walks beside true abundance. Some journeys feel lonely only because they were never meant to be crowded with people who could not walk beside you. Looking into the night sky gently reminds us how small our worries become when placed beside the endlessness of the universe. Eventually you realize that contentment was never waiting somewhere else, because it had been quietly following you all along. And perhaps growing older is simply learning that the life you searched everywhere for has quietly been waiting within you from the beginning. Once you truly understand that, the desire to impress others quietly begins fading, making room for something much more meaningful to grow. That new beginning often feels surprisingly simple, choosing authenticity each day. Wells never chase thirsty travelers, yet those searching sincerely always know where to find fresh water when they truly need it. Blossoms never fear falling, because every ending quietly prepares the tree for another season filled with unexpected beauty and quiet renewal. Waves never stop reaching the shore despite disappearing each time, quietly reminding us that perseverance rarely looks dramatic while it is happening. Mountains never compete with one another for height, because each summit quietly belongs exactly where it was always meant to stand. Perhaps comparison disappears the moment you finally understand that another person's harvest was never meant to become your own timeline. Contentment quietly arrives when you stop asking whether you are ahead of others and begin asking whether you are true to yourself. Strange as it may seem, the life you admire most often begins the day you stop wishing for someone else's. And maybe that is what maturity truly offers, the quiet freedom of becoming completely comfortable with the person you have already become. Comfort slowly changes the way you measure success, because the richest life is often the one that finally feels enough. Chasing more is not always the answer, because an endless race quietly steals the joy hidden inside the present moment. Farmers understand something many of us forget, that every meaningful harvest quietly asks for patience long before it offers rewards. Much of life unfolds beyond our control, yet peace quietly begins the moment we stop resisting everything we cannot change. Rain never apologizes for falling, yet every forest quietly depends upon storms before it can grow strong enough to flourish. Looking back, even painful chapters quietly become meaningful once we finally understand the purpose they served within our story. Wisdom rarely arrives all at once, because every quiet step forward teaches something the previous one could never fully reveal. Sometimes the life you have been searching for begins behind a door you were once too afraid to quietly open. Standing higher never changes the sky itself. It simply offers a quieter perspective from which everything suddenly begins making more sense. And perhaps perspective has always been the greatest gift that growing older quietly places into our hands. Perspective quietly changes everything. Because life itself rarely becomes easier, yet the heart gradually learns a gentler way to carry it. Looking back, you stop counting everything you lost and quietly begin appreciating everything that remained beside you through every changing season. Gratitude quietly teaches that an ordinary sunrise often holds more lasting happiness than the extraordinary dreams we endlessly continue chasing. We often spend years preparing to live someday, forgetting has been Pum Day. Every sunrise quietly reminds us that beginning again has always been one of life's greatest and most generous gifts to every soul. Like ancient roots hidden beneath the earth, the strongest parts of our character quietly grow where nobody else can ever see them. Perhaps becoming wiser has never meant learning more, but quietly discovering what no longer deserves a place inside your heart. In the end, peace never arrives from changing the entire world, but from gently changing the way you choose to meet it. Maybe this is what growing older was always meant to become, not losing yourself, but finally coming home to who you truly are. And if today's thoughts stay with you tomorrow, then perhaps they were never just words, but quiet reminders that your best years may still be waiting ahead.